So let's pray. Lord, bless this video and bless us as we learn, as you learn from what I read from this this version of the Bible. It's the Revised English version. It's from Cambridge University in England. And just for your information, all Reformed Bibles around the world are taken from the King James's version, uh, writ- written by people in Stirling in Scotland for the King James of England, the King of England, just after the Reformation. And so your best, most accurate Reformed Protestant Bible is the New King James Version, which is the King James original in modern language. So that's the most accurate. But other Bibles like this one and the NRSV and all the ones that most people use uh, are taken from the King James. And of course, the Catholic, the Roman Catholic, and the Eastern Orthodox have their own, which is it's all pretty similar because people have copies of the original Hebrew and New Testament Greek languages too. So they all are constantly correcting them and improving the accuracy. So they're all really accurate now. As I say, this is the Cambridge version, and they all use their own translations in the modern language that they like to use in that region. So this is an English version. So here we are, verse 11, chapter 39 of Genesis. The story of Joseph. Joseph has been uh, kidnapped by his brothers, wrongfully because they're jealous that he's Jacob's favorite. Their father Jacob has been named Israel because God, the translation of Israel means struggling or fighting, wrestling with God, because he literally wrestled with an angel that God sent. Because he's a proud, selfish man who, although he listens to God and obeys God, this pride and selfishness in himself is down to the fear of losing to his brothers, one of his brothers. So there's a lot of family infighting going on again, where all his Joseph's brothers, so he has 12 sons, I think. Jacob, who's now called Israel. Jacob has 12 sons, later become the 12 tribes of Israel. So this is this big story, 4 chapters about Joseph. Joseph is um, the favorite son of Jacob, and so they're all jealous of him. So they kidnap it. They leave him for dead in the bottom of a dry well, and then they feel guilty and drag him out and sell him to some merchants who are going to Egypt. So Joseph is now in Egypt. He's then been bought as a slave by a wealthy Egyptian man called Potiphar, and his wife is an evil woman. But Potiphar is a good man. But as you'll see here, Joseph is trusted by the good, wealthy man who, as most Egyptians seem to do, they all seem to uh, obey God, you know, but they can't speak or hear with God like the first people that this Bible is all written about: Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and those descendants that can speak with God and listen to God. Mostly it's listening. Yeah. So there you go. So verse 11, one day when he came into the house to see to his duties, none of the household servants was there indoors. She caught him by his loincloth, saying, "Come, make love to me." But he left the loincloth in her hand and ran from the house. So she tries to seduce him. You know, when she saw that he had left his loincloth and run out of the house, she knows she's in trouble. So, yeah, she called to her servants, "Look at this." So she's lying to her servants immediately. That's how evil she is. You'd say she's possessed by the devil, you know, behaving like that, being the opposite of good to a very holy, a good man. So my husband has brought in a Hebrew to bring insult on us. He came in here to rape me, but I gave a loud scream. So not only is she lying, that he, she's turning it the other way around to say that he tried to seduce her, not her trying to seduce him, but she's accused him of rape, which is this. I guess it's this aggressive West. If you've been bullied really badly, like we all, as we're grown up, once may have done. So if you've been bullied really badly, obviously that's forcing somebody to do something that they don't want to do. So it's a mix of both bullying and seduction. So it's a false accusation of the most evil kind. So she has this evil inside of her. So I would say, she's possessed by the devil, personally. So she kept it by her. So she kept it as this false evidence that she's lying about. She kept the loincloth by her. She kept it by her until his master came home, and then she repeated her tale. So tale as in, false, uh, false story, the lie that she immediately thought of. And then she repeated her tale that that Hebrew slave you brought in came to my room to make me an object of insult. But when I screamed for help, he ran out of the house, leaving his loincloth behind. Joseph's master was furious when he heard that's Potiphar. Joseph's master was furious when he heard his wife's account of what his slave had done to her. He had Joseph seized and thrown into the guardhouse, which must have been also a prison, where the king's prisoners were kept, and there he was confined. When the Lord was with Joseph and kept faith with him, but the Lord was with Joseph still and kept faith with him. So just to say that the story of Joseph covers 4 chapters, and it's written in, as you can tell, in such a, like a mother reading to her children, in such a gentle and detailed way, with such love. It's important to recognize this amount of emotional, content that God gives in this book, in the Bible, to Joseph's story. And as I say, I was reminded about the good and evil that emotion can give. We all need emotion in our lives, and love is never without emotion. And so good and bad is really, it's important to discern what is good and bad. And Jesus gives stories, made up stories called parables, that are moral stories, moral meaning good and bad. So you know the difference. So if you look up Jesus's parables in the New Testament, it's really the most amazing thing about the Bible. So let's finish off this chapter 39. It's a tiny bit of the giant Bible at the beginning, right at the beginning. So he had Joseph seized and thrown into the guardhouse where the king's prisoners were kept, and there he was confined. But the Lord was with Joseph still, as he was in the start of the chapter. But the Lord was with Joseph and kept faith with him. That's trust. Kept trust with him. Kept faith with him, so that he won the favor of the governor of the guardhouse. So the governor of the guardhouse seemed to believe Joseph was a good man, not a bad man. He didn't believe the accusation simply because, so he must also believe in God, but is not able to communicate, hear words from God or speak to God. But mostly it's listening, as I say. It's only Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and the descendants that spiritually, not physically, but spiritually, have this communication with God that is in words, more than in the feelings. But it's amazing that this governor of the guardhouse must have believed in God, and so trusted Joseph. Joseph was put in charge of the prisoners, and he directed all their work. Amazing. The so Joseph is this source of leadership and money, as you'll see in as the 4 chapters develop. Joseph is someone who uh, the Bible looks to as a prosperity, but not the bullying prosperity gospel, but the kind prosperity gospel, whereby the crops do get watered by God, and we have got a comfortable life to live. And as you all know, in your conscience, God makes, or unless you had a bad childhood, God makes us believe in caring for one another without greed, but with generosity. And so you don't need to have lots of stuff yourself. And there are many people in England who live in their old age alone and lonely in big houses, and and there are many groups of poor people in England who will go there and scam them out of their money. And it's just a sad situation where if we believed in God and shared as we knew as a child in our consciousness is the right thing to do, we wouldn't keep loads for ourselves for useless reason, but rather make friends and share. So Joseph was put in charge of the prisoners, and he directed all their work. The governor ceased to concern himself with anything entrusted to Joseph, because the Lord was with Joseph, and gave him success in all that he did. So that is the amazingness of God. And people say that Joseph is like Jesus, but he's not. Jesus is far greater than Joseph. Joseph is trying hard to obey God, but Jesus was sent direct from heaven down to earth, in as an embryo in the one of the families, many generations, hundreds of years, perhaps thousands of years after Joseph. Thanks be to God for that. And you know the story; it's very famous about Mary and Joseph and their family.